Do you think that someone who's had high expectations placed on them by family or a peer group actually suffers creatively more than possibly a kid from a poor background that's had no expectations placed on them and they're free to do whatever they want?
I can give you a more generic answer to that by telling you about a classic psychological experiment.
Oh, she likes psychology. That'll be good.
This was a fellow named Murray, a very big psychologist in the 50s. This is a classic study at Harvard. Took a bunch of kids and gave them a battery of personality tests that determined whether they were secure or insecure. Then they gave them some darts and said, throw the darts at this target. And you could stand very close, a moderate distance away, or very far. And you wagered, and the amount of money you won was commensurate with the distance. So if you were very close, you wouldn't win much money because it was so easy. If you were very far away, you'd win a lot of money because it was so hard. Now this gets turned around to you. Where do you think the secure and the insecure people chose to stay?
Within their comfort zones?
Give me specifics. Where do the secure people stand?
Probably farther from the target.
And the insecure people?
Closer to it.
Okay, totally wrong. Usually people don't get this. Totally wrong, you get the distinction. The secure people stood in the middle, where they took a moderate risk for a moderate reward. The insecure people were bimodally split. Half stood very close. We understand that. You know, somebody will work at an insurance company for $2,300 a month. They're never going to hit a home run, but there's going to be food on the table. But why would insecure people stand very, very far away?
Risk the possibility that it could pay off?
Look at the flip side. If it doesn't, they've cushioned their fall. If you take a moderate risk and you fail, you're just not very good. But if you're way out here, well, yeah, I didn't sell the screenplay, but hey, you know, I'm out there trying, and it's hard to sell a screenplay. You cushion your fall. So there's something very safe about taking a very great risk with your life.
Interesting.
Because you're not a failure if you miss in the same way that if you take a moderate size, a realistic risk.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
I also I would add a corollary to this, and that is that what I've noticed...
You're going to dispute Henry Murray?
No, I'm going to talk about something that comes off that, about...
You don't screw with Murray.
About what is success, what is failure. And maybe this just comes from now, like, he's been teaching for a long time. I've only been teaching like 11 years, but... yeah, I wonder if, there's a lot of very successful people who are miserable human beings. Does that make them successful? So they've had success, they've taken risks, they're not happy people. But my feeling about success is, are you doing something, maybe you have to be a little older to sort of feel this, but are you doing something that you get up in the morning and look forward to doing? And are you contributing something? Because I think we're living in a time, hopefully we'll come out of it soon, and I think maybe some recent events will hopefully start to change this, but this me thing about we had this house guest. This is a perfect example, and it was 12/12/12, and my wife and my daughter and this house guest from Australia, they were all wishing, and it was right after the horrible thing that happened in Connecticut, or right before. No, I guess it was, I forget what date that was, and this girl said, well, I hope I win an Oscar this year. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a very young person's wish. That is a very self-centered view of life. And that is a view of success. You could get that Oscar and never work again. That happened to the great James Coburn. Couldn't get roles after his Oscar. And you know how long his career was. I mean, a struggle. I think he did work. But so I just wonder, I haven't come to a conclusion about it, but what I do tell my students is making a lot of money isn't necessarily going to make you happy. I've seen a lot of people who make a lot of money and are miserable human beings and don't help other people. Look at Matt Damon. Look what a great guy Matt Damon is. I was just watching a thing on him this morning. He's taking his life, which has been blessed, and he's passing it on. George Clooney, another great guy, right? Sandra Bullock. These are great people. And they know how blessed they are. That's the thing, is I think you can't know in your 20s. You can't know how blessed you are because you don't see it, because all you see is what's ahead of you and what you haven't done.
Or who's getting by faster than you, something like that.
Yeah, I think once you hit your mid-30s, it becomes less about that and what's going to make me happy. What's going to make me want to get up in the morning?
Sure.
I mean, what you guys are doing, I think, is, and I have nothing I need from you except an interview at some point. But, I mean, I think that, you seem like fulfilled people. You don't seem like you're, I don't know. I know a lot of people in their 40s who are unhappy,
Yeah, I think where, and maybe we'll edit some of this out, and where this is my question's going is, I've known a lot of very wealthy kids from very wealthy homes, and I grew up very poor, and I saw that there was great expectation placed on them.
That's funny.
And I think that they were held back creatively in some sense because they were, maybe not in Hollywood.
You mean the rich kids were held back?
A little bit, because maybe the parents really wanted them to go to great places, great schools, and become the pharmacist and do these different things. And again, maybe not in Hollywood. I think Hollywood's a different animal. Whereas with the poor kids, you're lucky he's going to get a job. And so they had more creative freedom, and some of them became musicians or different things, and they actually made a sustainable living off of it.
Well, I grew up around a lot of wealthy people, not show business wealthy.
Right.
And I think that can be a burden too. I mean, suppose you have a trust fund.
Sure.
And you don't have to work. I mean,
the drive isn't there.
I mean, I think, I come back to Steven Spielberg. I think if Steven Spielberg had been born with $5 trillion, he still would have done what he's done, because it's his need to make movies. He's had that since he was a little boy.
Right.
But I've been close to people whose lives were ruined by having money.
I was talking to an accountant. Accountants come up all right. Who was telling me that right around the time of toward the end of the dot-com boom back in the 90s, that he had a bunch of clients who were average, middle-aged couples who all of a sudden were part of this company. Now they have $38 million and 2 kids. And he said, how am I going to get my kid to want to study algebra in high school when he knows he's going to get $14 million in the trust fund? Like, what kind of, and they worked out all these weird incentives for their kids, If you get this kind of grade point average, you get this. If you graduate from this school, you get this. If you get this kind of... And literally, they were trying to build incentives in because they felt it would be crippling to know that no matter what you do, you're covered.
See, I grew up having absolutely no expectations from my parents. My dad was out here. I was raised pretty much by my stepfather and my mother, who had issues, mental health issues. And you can edit this out if you want to. I'm sure it's boring as hell. But the part that's interesting is I think sometimes rich kids, or kids who have, who are okay financially, their parents don't, or their grandparents or whomever, they don't have any expectations either.
I don't think there are rules.
Again, it's like every case is individual.
I can tell you, with people having sat in that chair, that all different backgrounds, there's no
rules.
In Karen's chair? Or my chair?
Your chair.